Welcome to English from A to Z. Ready to level up your English? Here we learn through stories, slow, clear, and fun. Listen, relax, and enjoy the journey.
Chapter 1: Why I Decided to Learn English in 1 Month. Hello, and welcome to this story, the story of how I learned English in just 1 month. Sounds impossible? That's what I thought too. But let me take you back to the very beginning. Maybe you'll see how possible it actually is when your reason is strong enough. My name is Alex. I was living in a small town where English wasn't really a thing. Sure, we learned it at school, the basic grammar, the usual textbook phrases, some vocabulary lists, but nobody around me actually spoke English. It was just a subject, like math or science. We passed exams, we forgot the rules. That was it. But something changed. It all started one evening when I got a message from a friend. He had just moved abroad for a job, in Canada. He was doing well, working at a cool company, making international friends, and most of all, speaking English every single day. I was jealous. Not in a bad way. But in the kind of way that makes you stop and ask, what am I doing with my life? That night, I made a decision. I wanted to learn English for real. I didn't want to just pass a test. I wanted to understand movies without subtitles. I wanted to talk to people from other countries. I wanted to travel and feel confident. I wanted opportunities. And I didn't want to wait for years. I wanted results fast. That's when the crazy idea came to my mind: what if I could learn English in just 1 month? Now, I know what you're thinking. 1 month? That's not enough time. And you're right, it's not enough to become perfect. But maybe it was enough to become fluent enough. Enough to hold a conversation. Enough to feel the change. Enough to build a habit. I knew it would be hard. I knew I would need a plan. But more than anything, I knew I had to go all in. No more "I'll do it later." No more just 10 minutes a day. If I wanted to see real progress in 1 month, I had to make English my life. Not just something I studied, something I lived. I looked at the calendar. It was the 1st of the month. Perfect timing. I had 30 days. I told myself, this month, English comes first. Everything else can wait. So I started. But not by downloading 10 apps or buying expensive courses. I started by asking myself one simple question. How can I surround myself with English from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed? That question changed everything. Because learning English isn't just about grammar rules and vocabulary lists. It's about how much English you can put into your brain, your ears, your eyes, and your mouth every single day. And that's exactly what I did. This is the story of how it all happened. What worked, what didn't, and how by the end of 30 days, I could talk to people, understand fast English, and even think in English without translating in my head. But before we jump into the methods, the techniques, and the practice routines, let me take you through that first day. The day I made the decision. The day everything changed. It was a Sunday. I remember it clearly. I woke up and said to myself, today, we begin. I deleted all the non-English apps on my phone. My social media? Switched to English. My YouTube homepage? All English videos. My phone language? English. My laptop settings? English. It felt weird. but exciting. Even my music playlist, gone. Replaced with English songs. I didn't understand half the lyrics. But I kept listening. Again and again. Something was happening. My brain was confused, but curious. It was like it had entered a new country, without leaving my room. And that was just the beginning. If you're trying to learn English right now, I want you to know this: the moment you decide that English is not just something you study, but something you live, that's when things really start to change. Chapter 2: Setting the Goal and Creating a Plan. Day 1 was exciting. It felt fresh, like a new beginning. But excitement doesn't last forever. If I wanted to learn English in 1 month, I knew I needed more than energy. I needed a plan, something clear, something realistic, something I could actually follow. So I sat down with a notebook and wrote one question at the top of the page. What does learn English mean to me? I had to define it. Did it mean becoming fluent like a native speaker? Probably not in 1 month. Did it mean passing IELTS with a high score? Not exactly. I wasn't taking the test yet. After thinking for a few minutes, I wrote this. I want to be able to hold a 15-minute conversation with a native speaker without translating in my head. That was my goal. Simple. Clear. Measurable. Not perfect English. Not every grammar rule. Just one thing: be able to speak and understand. Now that I had a goal, I asked the next question. How do I get there in 30 days? I looked at my daily routine. I worked part-time, so I had about 6 to 8 hours free every day. Enough time to do something serious. So I decided to treat English like a full-time job. If someone worked 8 hours a day for a month, that's over 200 hours. Imagine how much progress you could make with that. I broke my day into blocks. Not rigid schedules, but focused sessions. I called it my English immersion routine. Here's how I divided my time. 1 hour of listening, morning podcasts, YouTube interviews, or TED Talks, anything natural, not too slow. 1 hour of reading, after breakfast short stories, articles, and news, all in English, all interesting to me. 1 hour of speaking, midday alone or with language exchange partners. Shadowing, repeating, answering questions. 1 hour of vocabulary, afternoon using flashcards, writing example sentences, reviewing common phrases. 1 hour of writing, evening journaling, describing my day, replying to prompts online. 30 minutes grammar focus, optional only when needed. Not rules, but patterns I noticed while reading or listening. 30 minutes review, before bed rewatch videos I liked or read over my journal in English. That was about 6 hours. Sometimes more, sometimes less. But the key was consistency. Every day. No breaks. English wasn't just something I studied in the morning and forgot about after lunch, it followed me everywhere. I even set tiny goals for each week. Week 1, get used to English everywhere. No fear. Build the habit. Forget perfection. Week 2, speak every day. Practice the most common phrases. Focus on understanding natural speech. Week 3, stop translating. Think in English. Push past frustration. Try watching English movies without subtitles. Week 4, real conversations. Record myself. Test my progress. Reflect on how far I've come. Now, The plan was ready. But let me tell you something important: planning is easy. Sticking to it? That's the real challenge. So I created a rule for myself. If I skip one day, I must do double the next day. It was a simple way to keep myself accountable. No skipping. No excuses. I put a calendar on my wall and gave myself a green check mark for every full English day. It felt good. Like progress. Like I was in control. But even with all this, I still felt nervous. I mean, what if it didn't work? What if I did all this and still couldn't speak? I had to remind myself, learning a language isn't magic. It's momentum. If I just kept showing up every day, improvement would come. And so I started the plan. Day 2, Day 3, Day 4. Each day felt different. Some days I felt powerful, like I was flying. Other days were hard. My brain hurt. My mouth refused to say things right. I forgot words I had learned just yesterday. But I didn't stop. I kept going. Because every time I felt like giving up, I remembered that goal: a 15-minute conversation, no translations. And even though it was still far away, I knew I was getting closer. Keep listening. It only gets better from here. Chapter 3: Immersing myself completely, no more translations. By the end of the first week, something strange was happening. I was dreaming in English. The dreams weren't perfect, of course. Sometimes they were just flashes, English signs, short phrases, people speaking fast. I didn't always understand everything. But it didn't matter. It meant that my brain had started to accept English as something normal. Something familiar. And that, to me, was a sign that full immersion was working. Let me explain what I mean by immersion. Immersion doesn't mean flying to an English-speaking country. I didn't buy a plane ticket. I didn't travel. But I did something more powerful. I brought English into every single part of my day. Not just during study time. Not just during listening or reading practice. I made English my environment. I woke up with English. I listened to a podcast while brushing my teeth. I read English subtitles on my cereal box. I watched English news while eating breakfast. And here's the important part. I stopped translating. At first, that was really hard. My brain wanted to go back to my native language every time it saw a difficult word. It wanted to understand everything. But I didn't let it. If I didn't understand a word, I paused. I looked at the context. I guessed. If I still didn't get it, I moved on. I didn't translate it. Why? Because when you translate, you interrupt your flow. You stop your brain from thinking in English. You create a gap between input and understanding. And I didn't want that gap anymore. I wanted to train my brain like a baby learning a language. Babies don't translate. They listen, watch, repeat, and slowly the meaning becomes clear. So I followed that method. When I watched a video, I watched it with English subtitles only. No translations. No cheating. If I missed something, I didn't panic. I let it go. At first, I understood maybe 40%. But after a few days, 50%. Then 60%. And suddenly, I could watch entire YouTube videos in English and understand the main message, even if I didn't catch every word. That felt amazing. And then came the next challenge, thinking in English. This was the real test. I started small. Just asking myself basic questions in English. What am I doing right now? What do I want to eat? How do I feel? What's the weather like? It felt weird at first. I had to force it. I kept wanting to think in my native language and then translate the sentence. But I stopped myself. I told myself, no. Think in English. Even if it's simple. Even if it's wrong. So instead of thinking, I'm hungry, I want rice, in my native language and then translating, I started thinking directly, I'm hungry. I want to eat something. Maybe rice. And you know what? It worked. Slowly, my thoughts became shorter, clearer, and more natural. I stopped building sentences like a puzzle. I started feeling the sentence. And the best tool I used during this time? Describing everything around me. Out loud. It didn't matter if I was alone in the kitchen or walking to the store. I would look at something and say in English, this cup is red. The sky is cloudy today. I'm going to buy bread. I sounded crazy sometimes. But I didn't care. I was training my mind to make English automatic. And honestly, after just a week of doing this, I noticed a real difference. I didn't freeze when I wanted to say something. Words came faster. My sentences were smoother. I still made mistakes, a lot of them, but I didn't feel stuck. I realized something powerful. Fluency is not about knowing every word. It's about not getting stuck when you don't. And the only way to reach that is through real exposure, not perfect study. So I gave up the idea of mastering grammar before speaking. Instead, I listened more. I repeated phrases. I shadowed speakers. I even started copying their intonation, their emotion, their rhythm. One day, I was watching a video by a native speaker. I paused after each sentence and repeated it with the same tone. Not just the words, but the feeling. It felt like acting, like becoming someone else. But it helped me sound more natural. After 2 weeks of full immersion, no translations, and constant English exposure, something beautiful happened. I was no longer afraid of English. I wasn't perfect. I still got confused. But I felt like English was no longer a stranger. It was becoming my second home. If you're learning English right now, try this. For just one day, switch everything to English. Don't translate. Don't be afraid of confusion. Live inside the language. And see what happens. Chapter 4: How I Learned Vocabulary Fast. Let's be honest, learning vocabulary is one of the most boring parts of studying a new language. At least, that's what I used to think. Back in school, we used to get long lists of words every week. The teacher would say, memorize these by Friday. And we'd write them again and again, 10 times, 20 times. Sometimes we remembered them. Sometimes we forgot them the next day. So when I started my 1-month English challenge, I knew one thing for sure. I needed a better way to learn vocabulary. I didn't want to waste time writing words I'd never use. I didn't want to memorize a list just to forget it. I needed to learn the right words, and remember them in real situations. So I changed my strategy completely. Instead of focusing on single words, I started learning phrases. I realized that native speakers don't speak in individual words. They speak in chunks, groups of words that go together naturally. I'm not sure. It depends on. At the end of the day. To be honest. These short phrases are like building blocks. Once you have enough of them, you can create conversations that feel natural and fluent, even if your grammar isn't perfect. So I made it my mission, every day, I would collect 5 to 10 useful phrases from real content, videos, podcasts, articles, conversations. Not from textbooks. Not from vocabulary lists. From real English, spoken by real people. And here's how I learned them fast. 1. The catch and repeat method. Whenever I heard a phrase I liked, I paused the video, repeated it out loud, and wrote it down, but not just the phrase. I wrote the full sentence it came from. For example, I heard this sentence in a podcast. I didn't see that coming. I paused it, repeated it 5 times with emotion, and wrote it like this. I didn't see that coming. When something is a surprise or unexpected. Then I made my own examples. I didn't see that ending coming. Wow, she quit? I didn't see that coming at all. That helped me own the phrase, not just remember it, but know when and how to use it. 2. Speaking the words into life. Every new phrase I learned, I tried to use the same day, in writing, in my daily journal, or by talking to myself. I'd say, to be honest, I didn't sleep well last night. At the end of the day, I just want to be happy. When I used a phrase 3 or 4 times in one day, it stayed in my memory. It felt like mine. The more I repeated, the more natural it became. My mouth got used to the rhythm. My brain started reaching for it automatically when I needed to say something. And that's the secret. Words you use become part of you. Words you don't, disappear. 3. Visual flashcards, not boring ones. I also created flashcards, but not in the usual way. I used an app on my phone, and I made each card like a little scene. On the front, the phrase. On the back, a full sentence with a picture or a voice recording. So instead of seeing, get up equals to wake from bed. I usually get up at 6 a.m. Picture of someone yawning in bed. This made the word feel alive, not a definition, but a part of a story. 4. The one phrase per hour game. Some days, I challenged myself to use one new phrase every hour. I'd pick a phrase in the morning, like can't complain, and find 3 different situations to use it in. How are you? I'm good, can't complain. Talking to myself, work's been okay, can't complain. In my journal, this week has been fine. Nothing special. Can't complain. By the end of the day, that phrase was mine forever. 5. Vocabulary from emotion, not obligation. This was probably the most important rule I made for myself. Only learn words that interest you. That move you. That feel useful. If I saw a boring business phrase that I knew I'd never use, I skipped it. If I heard a fun slang word in a comedy sketch, and I loved the way it sounded, I grabbed it. Learning vocabulary from emotion made it stick. And little by little, my vocabulary started growing fast. I didn't just learn random words. I built a toolbox of phrases I could actually use in conversations. I was no longer searching for words in my head. They started coming naturally, like old friends. After about 3 weeks, I counted all the phrases I had collected. Over 250. And I actually used most of them. Not perfectly. Not always smoothly. But I used them. And I started to notice something beautiful. When I listened to podcasts or watched videos, I began to hear the same phrases again and again, phrases I had learned just days before. Suddenly, I wasn't lost. I could follow the conversation. I could feel the meaning, even without understanding every word. It was like learning the secret language of real English. And that gave me confidence, confidence to speak, to write, to express myself. Chapter 5: Speaking Practice Without a Partner. When people hear I learned English in 1 month, the first question they ask me is, "But who did you practice speaking with?" And here's the surprising part. For most of that month, I practiced speaking completely alone. No teacher. No language partner. No conversation classes. Of course, speaking with others is amazing, but if you don't have someone to practice with, it doesn't mean you can't become fluent. I proved that to myself. I learned to speak English by talking to myself. It sounds strange at first. Maybe even a little crazy. But I promise you, it works. Let me tell you how. 1. The mirror method. Every morning, after brushing my teeth, I stood in front of the mirror and started talking. Not just random words, full conversations. I imagined I was introducing myself to someone. "Hi, my name's Alex. I'm from a small town near the mountains. I started learning English because I want to travel and meet new people. Today I'm feeling pretty good, but a little tired." At first, I had to think about every word. Sometimes I got stuck. Sometimes I didn't know how to say something. But I kept going. The mirror helped because I could see myself. I practiced facial expressions, body language, pronunciation, everything. It felt real, even though I was alone. And day by day, I started to speak faster. Smoother. With more confidence. The best part? No one was there to judge me. No fear. No pressure. 2. Shadowing, my secret weapon. If there's one method that truly changed my speaking level fast, it was shadowing. Shadowing means listening to a native speaker, usually in a podcast or video, and repeating exactly what they say, at the same time, with the same rhythm and emotion. It's not easy at first. You feel like your mouth can't keep up. But that's the point, it pushes you to speak naturally, not slowly like in a textbook. Here's how I did it. I chose a 2 to 3 minute clip from a YouTube video. I listened to it once to understand the meaning. Then I played it again, sentence by sentence, and repeated it out loud. Finally, I tried shadowing the full clip without pausing. Some of my favorites were interviews, travel vlogs, and TED Talks, anything with clear, real English. After just a few days of shadowing, I noticed a huge improvement in my speaking speed, pronunciation, and sentence flow. My brain started to copy the music of English. I sounded more natural without even trying. 3. Recording myself every day. This was a game changer. Every evening, I opened the voice recorder on my phone and spoke for 5 minutes. Some days, I described my day. Today I went to the market and bought some fresh fruit. It was really hot outside, so I stayed home and watched a movie. Other days, I gave myself topics. What's your favorite city and why? Talk about your childhood memories. Explain how to cook your favorite meal. I didn't worry about mistakes. I just spoke. The goal was fluency, not perfection. And then, I listened to the recording. That part was hard. Hearing my own voice in English made me cringe at first. But it taught me so much. I noticed what I repeated too often. I heard the words I was missing. I caught pronunciation errors I never realized before. And the best part? A week later, I listened again, and I could hear the progress. I was speaking more smoothly. My sentences were longer. I sounded more confident. It felt like proof that all the hard work was paying off. 4. Talking to AI and voice assistants. On lazy days, I still wanted to speak, but didn't feel like thinking too hard. So I opened my phone, turned on Google Assistant or Siri, and started talking in English. What's the weather today? Set a timer for 10 minutes. Tell me a joke. It was simple, but it helped me practice short sentences, pronunciation, and confidence. Later, I also tried language apps with speaking features, like practicing dialogues or answering questions aloud. It wasn't the same as a real person, but it still trained my brain and voice. 5. Think, Speak, Repeat loop. One of the most useful habits I built during this time was this 3-step speaking loop. Think in English. Simple thoughts like I need to buy milk, or that's a nice car. Speak it out loud. Say the sentence clearly, like you're talking to someone. Repeat with variety. Change the sentence slightly. I need to get some milk. I should buy milk later. Maybe I'll grab some milk on the way home. By doing this, I didn't just practice one sentence. I learned how to express the same idea in different ways, just like native speakers do. That helped me become more flexible in conversations. I didn't panic when I forgot a word, I just found another way to say it. By the end of the 3rd week, I had spoken more English alone than I ever had in school with classmates or teachers. And you know what? It worked. I started to feel fluent. Not because I was perfect, but because I had trained my voice, my brain, and my confidence. If you're learning English and don't have someone to practice with, don't worry. Be your own conversation partner. Speak to yourself. Record your voice. Copy native speakers. And most of all, don't be afraid of sounding silly. Every sentence you speak brings you one step closer to fluency. Chapter 6: Facing Frustration and Staying Motivated. Learning English every day sounds exciting, and for the first 2 weeks, it really was. Every day felt like a small victory. I was collecting phrases, speaking to myself, watching videos without subtitles. I felt the progress. I could see it, hear it. But then, in week 3, something changed. The motivation started to fade. One morning, I woke up and didn't feel like studying. I opened a podcast, listened for 3 minutes, and turned it off. My brain felt tired. My thoughts were negative. Why are you doing this? You're not improving. You'll never sound like a native speaker. I looked at my calendar, 17 days in. Over halfway. But instead of feeling proud, I felt stuck. That's when frustration really hit me. Not because English was too hard, but because I wanted progress faster. I had been working so hard. I expected results. I wanted to suddenly wake up and speak perfectly. But language doesn't work like that. It's not a straight line. It's up and down. Some days you feel like a genius. Other days you feel like you're forgetting everything. And let me tell you, those low days are the most important ones. Because that's when you decide. Do I stop? Or do I keep going? So I reminded myself of something I had written on day one in my notebook. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to show up. So I did. Even on the bad days, I did something. Maybe not 6 hours. Maybe just 30 minutes. But I didn't break the chain. That's the first lesson I learned. Progress isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. But it's still happening. Even if you feel tired, even if your pronunciation still sounds wrong, even if you forget a word you just learned yesterday, it's okay. Those moments are part of the process. Here's what I did to keep myself going during those hard days. 1. Remembered my why. I sat down and wrote again. Why am I learning English? Not just for fun. Not for school. But because I wanted freedom. I wanted to travel. I wanted to feel confident speaking to anyone, anywhere. I wanted to connect with the world. That was bigger than my frustration. So whenever I felt like quitting, I read that list. It reminded me that the reason I started was still strong, stronger than my doubt. 2. Watched my old recordings. This was powerful. On days when I felt like I wasn't improving, I listened to recordings from the first week. And I laughed. I was so slow, so unsure, so careful. Then I listened to my recent ones, and the difference was huge. That showed me something important. You don't notice your own growth while it's happening. But when you look back, you see how far you've come. It gave me the energy to keep going. 3. Changed the focus, from correct to connected. One of the most frustrating things in language learning is worrying about mistakes. I used to freeze in the middle of a sentence, thinking, wait, is this the right grammar? Should I say in or at? Past simple or present perfect? But I realized something: communication is more important than perfection. Native speakers make mistakes all the time. What matter? Can people understand you? Can you express your ideas clearly? Can you keep the conversation going? That's success. So I stopped trying to be perfect. I started trying to connect, with myself, with content, with the language. And that made everything feel lighter. 4. Did things I enjoyed, in English. Instead of just studying, I let myself have fun. I watched funny YouTube videos. I played video games in English. I read stories that made me laugh. I even listened to stand-up comedy. I didn't get every joke, but the ones I understood made me feel proud. That's when I realized. You learn best when you're having fun. Enjoyment brings energy. And energy keeps you moving. 5. Talked to future me. This might sound silly, but it helped. At night, I closed my eyes and imagined myself 1 month later, fluent, confident, relaxed in English conversations. I pictured myself traveling, making new friends, answering interview questions easily. And then I asked, what would future me say to me now? And I imagined the answer. Keep going. You're closer than you think. That gave me hope. That helped me stay on the path. So yes, I had bad days. Days I wanted to quit. Days I didn't feel good enough. But I didn't stop. I allowed myself to feel frustrated, and I kept moving forward anyway. And if you're learning English right now, I want to tell you. It's okay to feel tired. It's okay to feel slow. It's okay to feel stuck. But don't let that feeling make you stop. Because one day, very soon, you'll wake up and realize that English is no longer a scary subject. It's a skill you've built. A part of who you are. And that feeling? That moment? It's worth every hard day. Chapter 7, Results after 1 month plus what I learned plus conclusion. And just like that, 30 days had passed. I remember waking up on day 30 and just sitting quietly for a moment. No alarm. No to-do list. No podcast playing in the background yet. Just silence. Then one thought crossed my mind. Did it work? Did I really learn English in 1 month? Was I fluent now? The answer was more complex than a simple yes or no. But before I tell you what happened, let me take you back to the beginning, to the goal I set on day 1. I want to be able to hold a 15-minute conversation with a native speaker without translating in my head. That was the goal. Not perfection. Not IELTS Band 9. Not academic essays. Just a simple, real conversation, confident, natural, and flowing. So, on day 30, I opened a language exchange app and messaged a native English speaker I had connected with earlier in the month. We agreed to a 15-minute video call. I was nervous, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I cared. I wanted to see if all the work had paid off. The moment came. My heart was racing. We said hello. We introduced ourselves. And then, we started talking. About travel. About food. About culture. About the weather. About movies. About our goals. And here's the crazy part. The conversation didn't last 15 minutes. It lasted 32. I only paused once, when I forgot the word recommend. But instead of freezing, I said, "What's the word when you tell someone to try something, like a movie?" And the person smiled and said, "Recommend?" I said, "Yes. That's it. Thanks." And we kept talking. No panic. No translation. No pressure. Just real communication. When we ended the call, I smiled so wide I thought my face would crack. I had done it. Not perfectly. Not with a flawless accent. But I had reached my goal, and that was everything. So, what did I really learn in 1 month? Here are the biggest lessons from the entire journey. 1. Fluency starts with showing up daily. You don't need 10 years to learn a language. You need consistency. Every day. A little bit at a time. It adds up faster than you think. 2. Don't chase perfection. Chase connection. I made grammar mistakes. I used simple words. But people understood me. And I understood them. That's what language is for. 3. Confidence grows when you use English, not when you study it silently. Speaking, shadowing, thinking in English, these made me faster, sharper, more fluent. Not just reading rules. 4. Immersion works. Even without living abroad, I made English my environment. Music. Movies. Thoughts. Emotions. All in English. That created the mental switch. 5. You're always improving, even if you don't see it every day. Looking back was the key. The old recordings, old journal entries, they reminded me that slow progress is still progress. And now, a message for you, the person listening to this story. If you're learning English, preparing for IELTS, or just dreaming of fluency, I want you to remember something very simple. You are closer than you think. You don't need to be perfect to be proud of your progress. You don't need to wait for a classroom or a teacher to begin. You can start today. Right now. Just like I did. And maybe you won't reach your dream level in 1 month. But 1 month from now, you could be so much better than you are today, if you start. Speak out loud. Think in English. Don't be afraid of mistakes. Let English be part of your life, not just part of your study time. That's how fluency is built, not in books, but in your voice, your mind, and your daily choices. Final words. If you found this story helpful or inspiring, I'd love for you to stay connected. Subscribe to this channel for more real stories, listening practice, and tips for English learners and IELTS preparation. Like and comment below, tell me where you are in your English journey, or what part of this story spoke to you the most. And remember, English is not just a subject. It's your voice in the world. Use it. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.